Well, there's a big steam up here at the railway, and it's not just locomotives. It's vintage vehicle weekend. Welcome to In the Loop. Well, hello and welcome to In the Loop on the first day of our Vintage Vehicles weekend. Now, if you haven't been to this event, it is absolutely wonderful. One of my absolute favourite events of the year, and you can see why. Now, we haven't done one of these episodes in a while, so without further ado, it's time for a quick fire look around the railway to see what's been happening in the last 2 months. At the end of April, the Watercress Line celebrated its 45th birthday since reopening on the 30th of April 1977, and we also had our Spring Steam Gala with 2 visitors, the 8F from our friends at the Great Central Railway, which the crews have been absolutely adoring the whole weekend, and this absolute machine from the Severn Valley, 2857. Now, conversely, because of a locomotive swap, the S15 506 went on holiday to the Severn Valley for their gala. But I have to admit, this is an absolute machine. This is the Friday we're filming it, and it's been fantastic. A real credit to the guys here, and the locomotive reps on board have been absolutely superb as well. It really is a shame to kind of have to give it back, but equally that's the best thing about galas. You get visiting engines in, but the really hard bit is having to give them back at the end. And there is one more thing which makes this a little bit more, well, interesting. See, while all locomotives are different, Great Westerns are even more different. If you look back in previous episodes, you'll know that all of this train, or all of our trains, work off vacuum, so they take air out of the system to lift the brakes off. All locomotives, bar Great Western, run at 21 inches of mercury. Great Westerns run at 25. So what could happen? We pull a train in. If the next locomotive to come on doesn't work at 25 inches, well, the brakes aren't going to fully release. So what we have to do is what we call pull the strings. We let air into the brakes, completely take the brakes off, bar the handbrake on the guards van and the handbrake on the locomotive. Next train comes on, creates a vacuum, and off you go. Things you now know, eh? And it's not even one of those episodes. And as a cheeky bonus, the Wicken Trolley was doing rides here up at Messtead, giving passengers short rides up and down in the yard. A lot of happy faces, definitely something you don't normally get to ride on, and to be honest, that went really well. You know, we might have to do that again sometime. Now, on to the big stuff. Let's go to Ropley. Starting off here in the Motive Power Depot side of Ropley, we have the frames for 75079 as we've seen previously. Now the wheels have been sent away to the South Devon Railway for retiring. The horn guides are currently being machined. The axle boxes are just down here on a pallet to my right. The frames themselves are having a bit of remedial work. There's a bit of pitting and corrosion which is being taken care of. They'll soon also be getting the frame stretchers in, which adds an extra layer of structural integrity to the locomotive chassis. Behind me is our Class 11 12082. Not in for anything major, just some light maintenance and oil change. Understandably, it's important to keep these in tip-top condition because they are some of our most useful locomotives here at the Watercress Line. The bottom end of Kilmanston, so the frames and the wheels, that's progressing quite well. As you can see, the wheels are now back in. Of course, there's still some work separately to do on the boiler, but we'll go and have a look at that in a moment. Looking at the tender to 75079, work is progressing well. As we can see, we've got some new spring hangers on both sides, which have been riveted on. On the inside, the drag box is in place, and the drawbar, which we saw in previous episodes, that's now fitted and good to go. As with the main chassis frames, they're going to have some stretchers put in on the centre, and that just adds to the structural integrity. The next one I'm looking forward to. Exciting news with Canadian Pacific, for the tender tank has now been mounted onto the chassis, which we've seen in previous episodes. It's probably quite easy at this point to think, oh, just paint it up, put some water in, and off you go. But there's obviously a lot more, let's say, internal plumbing to get done first. But it's moves like this that really show that the locomotive is progressing, and to be honest, I can't wait to see this engine running. Now, with regards to our running locomotive fleet, 76017 is here in the wheel drop shed, having some light running maintenance, including taking the rods off, doing some light repairs, machining, what have you. The front pony truck has been taken out, and you notice the axle boxes have been taken off. They're going to be machined as well. Now, if you'd like to keep track of what's happening around here at Ropley MPD, then the group you need to follow on Facebook is Ropley MPD, where the staff and volunteer post regular updates about everything that's happening here in the sheds. Now, onwards to the carriage works. Over in the carriage shop, we have arguably people's two favourite coaches, the bar car and the kitchen car. The bar car is currently in for some bottom end maintenance on the bogies primarily. The kitchen car, as we've seen, is in for a lot of work, which is progressing really well. We'll have a look inside in just a moment. On the outside, we've got the area that's been reskinned. Jose, our fantastic painter, is currently going down, doing a bit of sanding and filling, and soon, eventually, once this is all done, this will be in the fantastic southern green livery like our other dining cars are. Inside the kitchen car itself, a lot has changed. As you can see, where I'm standing now, this used to be a little hidey hole. There used to be a wall here. That's been taken out, as you see. It's now going to be put back in just a little bit further. The idea is this will be a place for handbags and what have you. And in here will be a recess for catering trolleys that can be brought in through these double doors. The flooring itself, the metalwork has been replaced, and there's a few layers I'm standing on right now, comprising of sheeting and cladding and insulation. Moving further into the car, initially, there'll be nothing along the back, all serving space here. We're now going to have one long workbench, cooking equipment here, hot plates, what have you. Above us, we're going to have some extractor fans. They've been modified to make them more efficient and updated. LED lighting rather than what we have our temporary lighting at the moment. Off to my left, this was the serving hatch, but it was only really big enough for one person. Now, this coach sits in between the two dining cars. So this is going to be widened, so waiting staff can stand, get their food, and move to their respective coaches. Further along up here, once again, there used to be another wall here. This would be the kitchen space, where you guys are now. That used to be the washing up space, but this wall is now no longer going back in to maximise the space potential. We'll have washing up areas here. The bar is just behind you. With regards to the coach itself, an area here has been reskinned, looks absolutely superb, especially once it gets all painted. And yes, this is not going to be a heritage kitchen, this is going to be a stainless steel, all singing, all dancing, modern day standard kitchen on a train, well and truly maximising the use of all the available space. Just outside the kitchen, well, this is one of the busiest parts of the train. Behind me will be one dining coach, behind you guys will be another dining coach. Waiting staff will be coming up and down, collecting plates, collecting food, bringing plates and food back to be washed up. So it can get quite crowded. Now behind me was essentially a cupboard that didn't really have much of a purpose. It was originally a loo, it just turned into pretty much a cupboard. And what it did was create a massive bottleneck to where I'm standing. So all they've done is taken it out. And now we have a bit more space. And yeah, it's just those little things that really make a huge difference. Since it's not needed in service at the moment, the BY we saw being rebuilt last year has come back into the carriage work for some finishing touches. So painting on the inside, they've done some work on the interior walls and doors as well, and they'll be putting some little extra details on, like the chalkboards to mark in the destinations. Now, onwards to the boiler shop. Starting off in the boiler shop, we have Kilmerson's boiler. The bottom new section has been welded on. The next stage will be drilling for patch screws and stays, and the tubes have been annealed, ready to go in. Behind me is the boiler for Canadian Pacific, we've seen quite a few times. In front of me is the ash pan. Now, when the boiler's the right way up, this will be underneath to catch all the ash to save it dropping on the track and setting fire to half of Hampshire. This is the main bodywork. There's still a bit of work to go, so the mechanical side of things, the hopper doors, ash pan doors, great support, and also ash pan spray. Now with the boiler itself, the guys staying this, they're about 75% of the way there. Once it's all done, the stays on the inside of the firebox need to be rounded over, and this is where they heat it up and essentially use a rivet gun to round the tops off the screws, and this stops them burning away under the heat of the firebox. So progressing really well. And finally, with the boilers for both 75079 and 499, where it's progressing well, they're currently working on the lap plates which joins these two plates together, especially the bits along the bottom here. Now this is where the firebox actually sits, so these welds here, they're the ones that really suffer under the intense heat of the firebox, and also when you rake the fire through and they occasionally do get hit, it's understandable really. So they're currently in place, ready to be TIG welded. The next stage, both of these will be flipped onto their backs and they'll start working on the steel work, things like the float plate and outer works. At the start of April, the railway hosted its first mainline visitor of the year in the form of the Hastings unit on a rail tour. Now the Hastings unit is a bit like the Hampshire unit, but longer and slimmer to deal with the narrow clearances on the Hastings line itself. Aside from doing its mainline rail tour in from Alton all the way down to Alresford, it also gave the opportunity for Watercress Line passengers to have a ride on the unit between Alton and Alresford, and also Ropley and Alresford. Now, it's not the first time the Hastings unit has visited the Watercress Line, and hopefully it won't be the last, because it does look absolutely superb here. The guys over at the Miniature Railway have another new locomotive, modelled on a Class 67, and are also gearing up for their next steam gala on the 25th and 26th of June, including 2 visiting steam locomotives from the Eastleigh Lakeside Railway, so plenty to look forward to. And one thing you might notice is our 47 is back in action. Yes, it's been out for a major engine overhaul, as comes with most of the lifetimes of these 47s. Recently, the cylinder liners and the pistons themselves went back into the engine. Test start went well, and it's brilliant to have a fantastic locomotive back, a real useful engine here at the railway. And of course, the railway has a new CEO appointed, Amanda Squires from the Brooklands Museum, and we can't wait for her to join our family in a few months' time. Now, since you mentioned galas, one question we do get asked occasionally is, who are the locomotive reps and what do they do? Well, pretty much any time a locomotive goes to a different railway, a locomotive rep or two will accompany it. The rep's job essentially is partly to represent the railway, but also to help the crews out, advise on quirks of the engines, because there's not a wide pool of locomotives that people are used to now. For example, we don't get many Great Western engines down here, so the locomotive reps will advise us on how to get the best out of the engine and any little quirks they might have. Well, certainly a lot happening here at the Watercress Line as always, so to be honest, so much has happened. I think the only way to really end this is with a few highlights of the last few months. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.